Carlos Alcaraz has been on fire this year. He's won the French Open and Wimbledon and has been almost unbeatable this summer. The stage was set for him to continue this dominant run at the Olympics, where he had a chance to be the youngest singles gold medalist in the history of the sport and the first Spaniard to win gold since Rafa. It would have been a historic moment for Spanish tennis. But even after making it to the Olympic final without dropping a set, he fell short against Novak Djokovic. This was really a big missed opportunity that could stick with the 21-year-old for a while. For a guy who's been so clutch in these big matches recently, what was different this time around, and what should we make of this loss? Spain has produced a lot of great players throughout the years, including one of the greatest of all time in Rafa Nadal. Despite this, Spain has only enjoyed moderate success at the Olympics. In fact, Rafa is the only Spaniard ever to win a gold medal in tennis. He did it once in singles and once in doubles. Since 2000, only Rafa and Pablo Carreño Busta had won singles medals for Spain. Would Carlos add to that legacy in 2024? Only time would tell. Carlitos no doubt came into the Olympics with plenty of confidence. He'd already won 2 majors this summer and had his eyes on another big title. However, this one may mean just a little more. Alcaraz has always taken great pride in representing Spain, and to him, playing in the Olympics is surely one of the highest honors. Following Jannik Sinner's pre-tournament withdrawal, Alcaraz was bumped up to the number 2 seed, which would end up being a really big deal. But more on that later. With a fairly decent draw and a 15-1 record this summer, Carlos was ready to make some noise in Paris once again. I mean, he would be the youngest ever Olympic gold medalist and match Nadal by winning gold in his first attempt. Hold on, before we get to his singles run, we have to talk about Nadal-Alcaraz. This doubles pairing had to be the most hyped up doubles team of all time. Sure, they didn't make it to the medal rounds, but the energy and passion they brought definitely showed how exciting doubles can be. Just imagine if these two played together regularly on tour. What could have been. Anyways, let's get back to the singles. So in the first round, Alcaraz faced an opponent that he likely wasn't too familiar with in Heidi Habib. Habib, who represents Lebanon, only found out he would be competing in the singles draw after Hubi Hurkacz withdrew a month before the tournament. Him and his compatriot Benjamin Hassan became the first Lebanese players to compete in the Olympic singles event. However, Habib's singles campaign would be short-lived. The world number 274 just couldn't keep up with Alcaraz. Carlitos saved all 4 breakpoints he faced and broke Habib 4 times himself. A 27-12 winners to unforced error ratio didn't hurt either. In the end, Alcaraz won comfortably, 6-3, 6-1. First step towards the podium? Check. In the second round, Alcaraz faced a significantly higher-ranked player in Talon Griekspoor. Carlitos raced through the first set with 3 times as many winners and half as many unforced errors as his opponent. The second set was a lot closer though, with Griekspoor upping his winner count and first serve percentage significantly. However, in the second set tiebreak, Alcaraz upped his aggression even more and drew a few forced errors from the Dutch player. He also only missed 1 first serve in the tiebreak, which ultimately proved to be the difference. Next up, the last 16. Roman Safiullin wasn't allowed to represent his country in the Olympics, but that didn't stop him from taking out 2 of the top 50 players in the tournament. He had only won 1 tour-level clay court match this season, which makes this run even more surprising. Safiullin did have a 1-0 head-to-head edge over Alcaraz coming into the match, but his illustrious run came to an end right here. Carlitos played another very clean match, with a +10 winners to unforced errors ratio. Safiullin, on the other hand, struggled, ending up with a -9 ratio. Advancing with a 6-4, 6-2 scoreline, the shimmer of an Olympic medal was almost in sight. Alcaraz's quarterfinal opponent, Tommy Paul, has always been a dangerous one. Paul is one of the few guys who can consistently match the physicality that Carlitos brings really to every match. Alcaraz was coming off a tough doubles loss less than 24 hours earlier, so a slow start here wouldn't have been too surprising. Despite having to come back from 15-40 down in his opening service game, Carlitos won an efficient first set 6-3. The second set was a different story as Paul built a 3-love lead and eventually extended that lead to 5-2. A third set seemed inevitable, but Alcaraz remained focused and fought all the way back to force a tiebreak. The tiebreak was back and forth the whole way, but Carlitos eventually secured it on his second match point. Now the margins were super thin in this one, but landing 75% of his first serves in and a 22-12 edge in the winner column made the difference. In his very first Olympics, Carlos Alcaraz was into the medal rounds, but he wasn't done yet. The only thing standing between Alcaraz and the gold medal match was Felix Auger-Aliassime. The Canadian had played a lot of tennis in this tournament, making deep runs in both singles and mixed doubles. Because of this, he played his singles quarterfinal match and then a doubles match on the same day. As a result, he didn't finish until late into the night, and it showed. 28 errors wasn't going to help the Canadian get the job done. Carlos took advantage of a sluggish Felix and dispatched him quickly, 6-1, 6-1. A gold medal was now only one victory away. Remember how I mentioned earlier that Sinner's withdrawal was a big deal? This is why. With Jannik in the tournament, there could have been a chance that Djokovic and Alcaraz would have met in the semifinal round or maybe even the bronze medal match. Now, I know it's obvious to say, but this would have completely changed the complexion of the entire tournament. But enough hypotheticals, let's talk about the match that we did get. Neither man had dropped a set coming into the final, and both were playing really good tennis. The first set alone lasted over 90 minutes and was back and forth throughout. In the first set tiebreak, it was even until 3-all when the Serbian rattled off 4 straight points to take the opener. Now the second set was just as close as the first, and naturally, a second tiebreak was needed. Novak immediately got the mini break, gave it up, then quickly got it back. Then Djokovic secured the gold with a forehand winner and sent Carlitos home with silver. So why couldn't Alcaraz get the job done in the final? Let's take a closer look at the match and see just what changed compared to his previous rounds. We often forget that Carlos Alcaraz is only 21 years old. He's already shown so much composure on the biggest stages that the sport has to offer. Winning your first 4 Grand Slam finals doesn't happen without having serious mental toughness. Carlitos has a huge amount of Spanish pride that gives him extra motivation in tournaments like this. However, that honor can also come with extra pressure. He admitted in his post-match press conference that the pressure of playing for his country honestly got to him. He said it was a type of pressure that he'd never felt before, even in a Grand Slam final. As the legendary Billie Jean King once said, "Pressure is a privilege," and that sentiment couldn't have been more true in this match. It was arguably the most quote-unquote negative emotion we've seen from Carlos after a loss. With statements like, "I felt like I let the Spanish people down," I can only imagine the thoughts that were going through his head during the match. But moving on from the mental side of the match, let's take a closer look at the stats that made the difference. One of the things that Djokovic does so well is limiting his unforced errors in order to put extra pressure on his opponent. And as we saw in the match, this often leads to errors from the other player in key moments. The nerves that Carlitos was feeling likely contributed to the higher number of unforced errors he was making early on. At the halfway point of the first set, Alcaraz had already hit double figures in errors. It seemed like the world number 2 was forcing the issue and not working the points, which is something he usually does so well. After an incredible forehand return winner from Novak at 3-all in the first set tiebreak, Carlos hit a backhand unforced error. Then, Carlos made another error on an out-wide forehand return, which we know is his weakest shot. In a set where there was almost no separation, these 2 errors made a world of difference. The second set was just as tight as the first, and the unforced error count got even better for both players. But unfortunately for Alcaraz, Djokovic served better in set 2, and Carlitos couldn't manage to generate another breakpoint in the match. This ultimately led us to, you guessed it, another tiebreak. The second set tiebreak went even worse than the first for Alcaraz. The Spaniard had 3 unforced errors in that tiebreak, with 2 of them coming in 2 of the final 3 points. For someone who's usually so clutch in these moments, the pressure he felt definitely showed in these end-of-set situations. Novak finished the match with 18 unforced errors, while Carlitos had 28. Novak successfully drew forehand errors from Alcaraz, with 17 of those unforced errors being on the forehand side. More often than not, when Djokovic has that big of an advantage in that category, he's going to get the win. In his previous 5 matches this tournament, Alcaraz averaged around 17 unforced errors. He may have gotten away with that against other opponents, but against Novak, forget about it. I also have to point out that there was a different vibe to Carlitos in this match, and he never fully looked comfortable out there. He had plenty of opportunities, but was impatient and rushed himself at times. Of course, Novak was going to take advantage of this, and eventually rode the wave of Carlos's errors to victory. Another thing that Djokovic is so good at is upping his aggression when he's playing someone who can hang with him in the longer rallies. He also wants to play this way now, so he doesn't have to move around on his knee as much. When it came to the rallies between 1 and 3 shots, Novak won 41, and Carlos only won 9. Yikes. I think that the nerves that Alcaraz talked about likely contributed to this stat. It's hard to be aggressive when you're nervous, and that's not really his game to begin with. Taking a look at the longer rallies, there were 46 rallies that were 7 shots or more. The win-loss ratio here was much better for Carlitos, where he won half of those points. Both players brought a really aggressive style of play to the gold medal match. In fact, they hit a combined 66 winners in 2 sets. Alcaraz had the upper hand in this category with 41 winners himself. Now, for Carlos, this was much higher than his tournament average of 20. But we all know that more winners doesn't necessarily guarantee a win. Now, clay isn't necessarily the surface where coming to the net is the most viable option, but it can still be an effective switch-up. Alcaraz came to the net 19 times in this match and won 14 of those points. This was a little bit above average for him. The increased aggression from Djokovic also showed up in this category as well, with him coming to the net 27 times and winning 20 of those points. Moving on to the serve, both players served pretty well overall, with Alcaraz getting 67% of his first serves in play and Djokovic 74%. Both players served particularly well in the second set, getting over 80% of first serves in play. The win percentage behind those first serves was also fairly similar, but the real eye-opener here is the breakpoint conversion stat. There were a combined 14 breakpoints in the first set. Djokovic faced 8 and Alcaraz faced 6. Both guys saved every single one. There was only one breakpoint in the second set, on Alcaraz's serve, and he saved that one too. Carlos had about a 45% breakpoint conversion rate this tournament before the match, and you have to wonder how much of a difference a break of serve could have made for the number 2 seed. Speaking of those breakpoints, why couldn't Carlos take advantage of any of his opportunities? I should also note that all 8 of the breakpoints that Alcaraz generated were on the ad side. For the match, 47% of Novak's serves went down the tee, and the Serbian won 76% of the tee serves on the ad side. On 4 of the breakpoints, Novak hit the tee serve when Carlitos was standing further behind the baseline, and even when Alcaraz switched up his return position, Djokovic adjusted. This was definitely a contrast from their last matchup in the Wimbledon final. Carlos broke Novak 5 times in that match, and was only broken once himself. Credit to the Joker there for making the tactical adjustments to avoid the same fate this time around. Bottom line, Carlos was just not prepared for the pressure of the gold medal match. Yes, the match was played on a court he was familiar with. And yes, he was playing an opponent who he was very familiar with. But playing for something bigger than yourself is just a different feeling altogether. In the Olympics, you're representing your entire country. We've seen how that pressure has gotten to Djokovic in the past, and a similar situation happened to Carlos in this match. We can go over the X's and O's all day, but at the end of the day, Alcaraz's biggest opposition in this match was himself. Will it take him as many tries as Novak to win gold? Maybe. Will the pressure get to him next time? Possibly. There are still a lot of unknowns, but this match showed us all that pressure and expectations can even derail the best of us. And that's honestly okay. Even though Alcaraz didn't secure the gold medal, he still has so much to be proud of. I mean, just take a look at these stats. Carlitos became the first singles finalist for Spain since Rafa won gold in 2008. He's only the 4th male Spaniard overall to make it to the gold medal match. The silver medal was also the 15th tennis medal overall for Spain, and the 2nd straight to make it to the gold medal match after Alexander Zverev accomplished the feat in 2020. While the nerves definitely got the best of him this time around, this experience could be invaluable for him going forward. There was sort of a passing of the torch moment in this tournament, with Nadal playing his final Olympic Games and Alcaraz playing in his first. I mean, how poetic would it be to see Carlos win gold in LA 20 years after Rafa won gold in Beijing? This loss shouldn't impact his overall confidence too much, and he's still way ahead of schedule when it comes to career achievements. And at 21 years old, Alcaraz is still relatively inexperienced despite all of his success. I mean, this is literally only his 4th full season on the main tour. He deserves so much credit for how much maturity he's shown in his career so far, so don't worry, he'll be just fine. Novak had some nice things to say in an Instagram post after the final. He's certain that Carlos will be on top of the podium, and we would love to see it. In Carlos's post, he congratulated Novak on his gold and received tons of praise from the tennis world in the comments. It's just so clear that both guys have a ton of respect for one another, which is really just great to see for tennis. Hopefully we'll get to see a few more finals between both of them before the end of the season. Looking ahead to future Olympics, the next 2 editions of the event will be played on hard courts. In 2028, tennis will be hosted at the Tennis Center in Carson, California. Barring any injuries, Alcaraz should be back and will most likely be back as one of the favorites for gold once again. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Novak back, maybe in the doubles, hungry for another gold to cap off his career. Sure, he'll be 41 then, but you can never truly count him out. 2032 is a little bit further away, but we know it'll be in Brisbane, Australia. The Australian Open is the one major that still eludes Carlitos, but by then he'll probably have figured it out how to win down under. Only time will tell, but I would be shocked if Alcaraz didn't add a gold medal to his trophy case before his illustrious career is over. It's crazy how far off this seems, but I could realistically see Carlitos playing in at least 4 more Olympics, which would put him at 37 years old for the 2040 games. But of course, anything can happen in tennis, and nothing is guaranteed. He's so young, but how many more Olympic opportunities do you think Carlos has left? Be sure to let me know in the comments. As for the rest of this season, Carlos still has some big tournaments coming up. He pulled out of the 1000 event in Canada, which is understandable given the super quick turnaround it would have been. He had 180 quarterfinal points to defend there, but that shouldn't impact him too much in the long term. His performance in Cincinnati, though, will likely determine how close he'll be in the world #1 race heading into the home stretch of the season. He's defending finalist points in Cincy and semi-final points at the US Open, Beijing, and the ATP Finals. His biggest opportunities to gain points will be at the Paris and Shanghai Masters, should he choose to play them. 630 points currently separate him and the current world #1 Jannik Sinner in the live rankings, so it'll be an exciting race to follow for sure. A storyline to keep track of heading into the end of this year and looking at the beginning of next season is a possible Carlitos slam. He has won the past 2 majors, and he'll be a big favorite at the US Open. If he does win in New York, all eyes will be on him in Australia. I'm not going to make any predictions about it right now, but it's definitely something to start seriously thinking about. Overall, this Olympics delivered in terms of drama, emotion, and feel-good moments. Carlos Alcaraz left it all out there on the court, and his home country should be so proud of him. Again, I'm sure his time will come. A silver medal is still an amazing achievement that will forever be a part of the legacy of Spanish tennis. If you haven't seen them yet, I just dropped a video analyzing Novak's run to the gold and a recap of the Olympics in general and just what the action meant to tennis fans. Until next time, keep going for the lines.